Thank you all for joining us today on the Africa Football Business Show, brought to you by the Football Foundation for Africa, supported by our partners OTB Africa, Palmer Sports, C Beyond Leadership Forum, and iSport Learn. For the iSport Learn collaboration coupon, you go use our code FFA10. And I thank you so much for having us today. With a lovely panel that I'm so lucky to be in front of today to discuss one of the most underrated yet most growing aspect of football right now, whose fast rising nature and underlying potential makes the most underlying makes it one of the most undervalued industry in football. And I'll be your host today, moderating the session together with a great panel with me today. My name is Judith Macharia, and I am the program coordinator at the Football Foundation for Africa, managing the AFDN, which is the Africa Football Development Network, which is a network that aims to bring together academies and local clubs in the region with the purpose to grow together through capacity building, information sharing, through under the concept of Ubuntu, which is just I am because you are. I am also the managing director of Roads to Goals and Arrow Sports Academy, whose jersey I'm joining today. And yes, and I look forward to an amazing session. And yes, with our panel today, I'd love to be the one doing the introduction, but I don't think I'll do enough justice. So please go ahead. I know we have so much here today, rich in expertise and experience from your playing field experiences and management through your various spaces in the game. Please go ahead. I'll start with you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you so much. Nice to be on here today. My name is Sseninde. I introduce myself as someone who is fighting for women's football in Africa and all over the world to make sure that girls get equal opportunities to play football. I played football myself and played for the Ugandan women's national team, part of the CAF women's football organizing committee, and also currently working as the director for women's director and founder for the Sseninde United.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
My name is Brightwell Kadenge. It's quite difficult to introduce yourself, but I'm going to be brief. I'm the CONIFA Women's Football Director for CONIFA Africa. CONIFA is an independent confederation of independent football associations. These are football associations that are outside FIFA, so they are not the mainstream type of football associations. We're talking about de facto states. We're talking about football isolated regions. We could be talking about Zanzibar, Sahrawi sort of kind of nations. And I'm also director of a top flights women's football team in Zimbabwe, which is called Chipembere Queens. We are in the league, and I think I would like to be remembered more as the director of Chipembere Queens than anything.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, I see how both of you are trying to be modest. But yes, we're so lucky to have you here and we look forward to this great conversation. So yes, let's just dive straight into the matter of the day. So you have both had your various experiences towards growing the women's football, and we all have different challenges, especially in the different contexts. Looking at, for example, at what you have been working on, Brightwell, is very different from the experiences that other states and how they manage the growth of the women football. And I understand that growing with the numbers of women football teams and footballers is a real challenge, but this could be attributed to the various stereotypes and attitudes that we have seen on women participation in football, which vary from one region to another. So what are some of the contextual differences in women development across the different spaces that you have been in your experience? And are these differences considered at local, regional, and global women football development agendas, even when they're developing these policies? Are these contextual differences considered? I'll start with you, Brightwell.
Well, there are very much contextual differences in Africa. Yes, Africa is one big continent with many cultures, religions. I think the social barrier is the biggest barrier in women football. There are stereotypes. Women who play football are this and this and that. So that creates a barrier for participation in terms of who will participate. It also creates a gap because some people will not assist. You should also remember that Africa is largely patriarchal because of religion, because of society, and because of tradition. So patriarchy is a problem when it comes to women football because patriarchy would be saying women should have specific gender roles, should be in the kitchen, should be doing this and this and that. But women football could also be used as a way to eradicate social problems and social barriers that we have in the society. It could be used to empower women. So, and also at CONIFA, unfortunately, we also have a geopolitical issue when we are talking about women football, because CONIFA is what it represents is not particularly what is popular against with most political governments in Africa. Zimbabwe might not want to have a Matabeleland Football Association having its own football association. And I guess maybe if it was in Kenya, you wouldn't want a Kikuyu or something, a Nairobi Football Association. But that's what we represent. We're trying to get at those people that are isolated because of particular reasons or maybe political reasons. And sometimes that also leads us into a geopolitical fight. And unfortunately, it affects mainly women. It doesn't affect the men because when you look at CONIFA, unfortunately, we do not have any women football representation in the CONIFA executive committee, meaning that all of the member association do not have any women football boss. So that's very distressing and disturbing.
Wow, that's quite interesting. And you really mentioned something on the geopolitical differences. I mean, it's always one challenge to be able to drive women football agendas in our societies, like where states have been run normally and everything. So I can only imagine how more challenging it is. Even looking at the situation that we've seen with other organizations, especially in Africa, if we are trying to push for women football, we don't look at the nuances that we have in these different spaces. If you're trying to develop a policy for other states who know they have at least some bit of encouragement from the local societies, it's quite different from your experience with CONIFA. So I can only imagine how these differences affect the effectiveness of what you're trying to do, and rather also encouraging the participation of women and girls. I mean, I believe there's a need to have like different strategies of engagement, even in the different spaces. Jean, please go ahead, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this.
Actually, Brightwell seems to have mentioned most of the points, but I would also love to add the differences in education. Lots of, if you see in Africa, it's so diverse in terms of um, some cultures, probably their education is formal or non-formal education. So the understanding becomes a little bit different when it comes to how we are supposed to do different things in terms of, let's say, giving equal opportunities to women and men, or the policies that we set up, or the way we understand different things. So that becomes a big one. But then also there is a point of the economy, which is different across the whole of Africa. You can see some African countries are really maybe a little bit well off, and then others are still backwards. So that also influences on some of the decisions that are made in different federations in terms of women's football. I mean, I would love to say some clear examples of, let's say, Nigeria women's football. They've been participating in every single World Cup since it was formed. And then you find a country that right now they don't even have a women's league, they don't even have women's football, but probably because of the differences in the economy, in the differences in, the finances, all those different structures. So it makes it really difficult. I think also, right, we mentioned about the religion, which is a big one in terms of some religions. Really, it's just something. It's a belief that you're probably sinning against the Lord if you're playing football. So that's like across Africa. It also becomes really, really difficult. So, I mean, not to repeat what has been said already, but I think those are some of the issues that I could put forward.
Thank you so much, Jean. And while we're discussing it, I just came back, something came back to my head. Even in our institutions, in my experience, while we're trying to bring more girls' participation in at the lowest level, for example, the 10-year-olds and whatnot, there's still a struggle, like in terms of encouraging them to come back into the game. And I look at this from the angle of us trying to drive women participation at the highest level. If you're not able to drive more participation from a lower level, so how does this also affect the participation at the higher level? Because you can't just expect them to develop some of these things like after they're all grown or something like that. So I think we should all also start like by bringing up a culture that encourages more women football participation from the lowest level. And I don't know if I've seen certain organizations or other academies try to adopt like mixed gender kind of settings as one of the ways to be able to drive this. But I think that's a story for another day to just see if it's actually effective to actually adopt the gender mixed angle. Yes. So following up on this, we know the differences between the women football and the men's game. So many times I get into arguments with people when you bring up the issue of women football and they say, right, there's no revenue and whatnot, so the women should not be paid the same. There's also the issue that women's football is not really popular, so they should not be put on the same level, or rather put together in the same group as the men's. And I feel that's always like the wrong angle to take up this conversation, because these two industries are very different, and we should not try to compare these two at the expense of growing women football. So we say women football should not deserve one or two, three things because they do not provide as much revenue or generate enough money from that angle as opposed to the men. And I feel that's a very wrong angle to take up this issue if you're trying to solve the issue, because right from the issue from investment and the differences in the strength and conditioning training, the effect of their menstrual cycles on their energy levels, the energy needs, and also just the space in the society as women. And I feel they should not be compared to the men, but appreciated for what it is. So, what are your thoughts on this? And as you deliberate on this, there's always something that I like. To also bring up in the issue of women footballers on identity. So they are athletes, but they have different identities in the society. They're mothers, they're wives, they're adolescents who always have their own issues to struggle with. They're also persons with disability as women as well. So coupled with all of these differences, how do you deal with these different identities within your institution, in your experience with working with women football? And are these differences that I mentioned, like the effect of the menstrual cycles, are these some of the things that are considered in the modules of training in your institutions, or in just in your experience of from what you've seen? Jane, please go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when we talk about women's football, it's kind of always a chat of kind of a long day. But I mean, when we talk about some of the differences and how we can deal with them, I would love to say that the first thing for me is investing, because if we are saying there is no revenue, which is one of the biggest excuse that has been given across the bodies, why don't we invest the same? Because if we invested 1 million in this game and then did the right things, then I believe we could be able to get out the exact same thing, as long as we are doing the right thing. So first of all, we need to invest in the game, so that we make sure that everyone that is involved and we are able to do the right thing. Then we talk about giving our time and putting people who are passionate in this position, but also educating ourselves at the same time. Because when we talk about dealing with menstrual cycle, those are things that are quite key, and also coaches need to be aware across the board. We need to continue supporting one another through such, and that means I mean, I'm trying to bring it in an angle that when we talk about the differences between men and women's football, personally, I wouldn't even love to think that there are differences, because they are two different sports. So there is no reason to even compare one sport to the other. I mean, I feel like it's how we would think cricket, and then we bring women's football. It's just completely different. So yeah, that's where we are bringing in a case of, let us put the same media coverage, or let us boom the media coverage, so that this is a completely different sport. People will get to know about it differently and brand it differently, because everything else that we are doing is different. So that if we are being underpaid, at least we are being underpaid because we didn't do the right thing when we got the investment coming in. We talk about the sponsorships as well. Sponsors are not coming on board. So I think, let the responsibility be on us as people who are involved in the game, in terms of showcasing our game to make it likable to the people who are out there. Myself, if I'm a footballer, I would love to put on a show. I would love to show those skills, when Mata is playing, or when Morgan is playing, and they do those crazy celebrations of drinking. So those are the things that the fans want. So it's up to us to make this sport likable to the people, so that
Yeah.
they can you know take this sport as, and this World Cup of 2019 took the sport to a different level, because I never for once even thought about men's football while I was watching that World Cup, because they blew it off, and the numbers, people were watching the game just because they are interested in this sport, not because they are thinking about some men's football somewhere. So I feel like it's up to us to actually put in the work and showcase this game in a completely different angle, so that people can enjoy it. That means the referees will, young girls who are dreaming of getting involved in this sport, the referees will come in, the coaches will get inspired and come in, the fans will come in big numbers, and everyone else, the sponsors and the parents, will support the young kids. So that's what I think.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jean. And I agree with you in what you said. It's a responsibility of everyone, every stakeholder in the game, to take charge and play their individual roles towards growing the game. I don't believe this is something that women only should be invested in. Even when I get invited in panels and they say, okay, we are talking about women football and we're going to bring an all women panel. I'm like, what are you trying to say? So you're trying to tell me there are no men who are driving these conversations in their different
Exactly.
spaces? And I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
those are the things we need to change. Yeah,
Mhm.
those are things we need to change.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you so much. Brightwell, I do know you have something to share.
Yeah. Um, when it comes to physiological differences between men and women, I think that's really a topical subject, which I think really deserves a lot of research. I'm not going to comment on anything because I know that that's the argument that has been used to ban or to make women football bad, seem bad. But suffice to say that playing football does not really affect women's health negatively as people would try to push forward when they are trying to put forward negative arguments. So I think FIFA, CAF, anyone should try and let's try and get more investment into research and understand exactly what's happening. Does it affect performance? Does it affect giving childbirth? Does it affect menstrual cycles? Those are the things we need to look at. And then when we're looking at general differences in terms of investment, I think men's football has had well over a century of uninterrupted development, investment, and therefore, for just one, it's less than a generation, for you that then to want women football to be at the same level, I think that's really unfair. Because you know that if you look at history, the issue of women football, you know that it has been banned well over in most of the football associations. So what do you do when something has been oppressed? You come up with redress. You come up with measures that try to address the issues that have been aired in the past. I'm going to take a drastic measure here. I think we need to come up with strong quota systems that are forced. We cannot have an issue where we need to say football associations should just have 2 women football representatives, and that's a must. And we're not changing. We need to say women football should have access to the development funds if they come, and not a football association that always seems to have ways of using women's football monies in ways that they will always try to explain, and they will actually get full audit reports that are approved by international sports organizations. So I think we need to find a way that funds that probably are coming from this international sports organization reach women football. I know this from experience, because when you hear COVID relief plan funds, you just get a trickle, and then the rest is explained in some dubious way. So I think that's bad. I don't know why FIFA does not, FIFA or CONIFA does not give the money directly to women football and then say account for the monies that we have given you, because I think this method is not working. It's just a way of promoting football associations to be corrupt and get away with it. And then when we're looking at measures probably to make it more visible, I think visibility, the creation of more role models. We need to have more role models. We don't need people to know Cristiano Ronaldo probably more than they know any of the women's footballers. I'm ashamed right now. I'm actually thinking of a Ugandan footballer I know besides Eugene, or anyone I know from Kenya, and I'm blank. I only know South Africans, probably, and Zimbabwean footballers, and that's it. So I think we need to have a mind shift and create role models that people could associate, and that are approachable to people, that people can say, I'm a personal fan of Carly Lloyd and Alex Morgan. When you just look at them, you just like them. So I think CAF and the African Association should do more when it comes to that. And then we need to create commercialization and professionalization of the game. I think it's time we make sure that every women's footballer has a contract and is paid. It's not good that you have players that are not being paid, and then you're talking about commercial revenues and you're expecting the quality to improve. I think that's bad. And then we need a lot of broadcasts and visibility, because in Africa, I guess probably I guess I've only seen South African Football Association on TV. I've not seen any other, and I think that's bad. And I think we need to have your big broadcasters like SuperSport paying to get broadcasting rights for things like the Champions League, things like women's football leagues, because if we don't have them, then the argument will continue. They are a loss-making venture, and in economics, we always try to minimize our losses and go with the things that we know always pay. But I think we need to do more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brightwell. And something you said on research, I believe that could just be one of the ways, because we don't really invest towards research, or rather knowledge production, or getting to know more about other ways we can improve women football from that angle. And that has been a huge factor in terms of not growing the game and understanding the different nuances from the fans and from the people who are in charge of managing the teams, or from the technical side of football. And something that you said that really struck me on the commercialization. And even as we go into the next question, and I think it's really connected to what you just mentioned. We've seen that women football has grown tremendously, even coming back from the CAF Women Football Champions League that we're just from. The quality has been obvious. That is no doubt. The women are very much pushed towards growing themselves, growing the game. There's so much commitment from their end, even if they don't have any kind of contracts, or most of them are not even financially compensated. And that is a problem when we talk about sustainability or commercialization of the women's game. And we've had conversations from different people say, okay, we probably need to have more football clubs aligning, the men's football clubs, that is, aligning to the women's football side, as one of the ways we could engage more fans from the men's side to, and also increase the commercial potential for the women's game. For example, the Kenyan team that represented us in the CAF Champions League was Vihiga Queens, and even as they headed into the tournament and doing so much, no corporate has come forward with that interest to want to invest in them. And I try to understand why there's so much skepticism when, even when you said role models, all of these people, with women football being a rising sport, access to some of these athletes as role models, people to just bring on as mentors to talk to the young girls. It's quite easy to get access to them. So I always feel like the efforts are minimum, so we definitely need to do more. But I'd love to throw this to you. This idea of aligning football clubs, the men's football clubs with the women's, as we've seen in Europe and America, they've mostly been doing that. I also saw NAPSA Queens, Simba, Wadi Degla, some of these clubs have pushed for this idea of adopting the men's team to create a women's team within institutions. Do you think this could be what Africa needs if effectively planned and implemented, acknowledging already that we have existing challenges in the African football ecosystem? I mean, just from looking at the kind of investors and whatnot, in itself, you're struggling from that end. So will this be an excessive burden, or will this be the one that actually spurs more growth for both institutions? Please, Brightwell, I'll start with you since you're fresh.
Okay. So I think CAF is trying to come up with something like that when they want someone who is playing in the Champions League to have a women's side, or a women's side that is affiliated to them. I think that's a good thing. I'm not really a fan of that, because I believe that there should be autonomy. People should be allowed. If I want a club, my club is not affiliated to any, there's no male version of it. It's only female. It's only the queens. That's it. So I think it's good if the clubs are not being coerced, are not being forced. I remember going to Manchester United, and then they said, you know what, we love women football, but not yet. We don't want a women's football side. I think we shouldn't force Manchester United to have a women's football side. But I know it has worked in America, Orlando Magic and Orlando Pride. But whether it will work in Zimbabwe, in Africa, in South Africa, in Kenya, Uganda, I doubt, because there's already skepticism. When we share the same stadium with the men's side, sometimes we do not even get access to the changing room because of fear of superstitions and juju and what have you. So imagine now, when you want the whole team to have a female, I think it's room for disaster. But I see where you're coming from. It has worked in America, in England. It has worked. But I think with the kind of people we have in Africa, I think it might not work, because people will say if they lose, it's because we have got this women's side.
Mm.
So I'm not really a fan.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you for your candid opinions. And Brian was also throwing out something at the same. Can we have separate associations with the right structure from an international federation level, like that focuses on women football? Would that be the solution? Like to just have it up, like separate institutions as the ones guiding women football separately from the men's, just separate leadership, separate everything, independent of it. Because I know even a club like Liverpool women, despite the Liverpool men being like a strong force in the English Premier League, the Liverpool women still struggle with infrastructure. They're playing at the championship level, but they're still struggling in terms of infrastructure, and the kind of playing field, they're not leveled at all. So that could also be a challenge, even when you decide to have them separately like this. And that is why brands like Manchester United would rather have, even if they're going to develop a women football team, it's going to be on a CSR angle. Like it's not going to be like an
Yeah.
investment for them, but it's just going to be like a CSR kind of thing. And yeah, I think Jim, please jump in while you answer all of these questions just connected to each other. I'd love to hear what you have to say, especially with your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to agree with Brightwell on that one. To be honest, I feel like, I mean, personally, I'm not impressed with men's football in Africa that much as some African countries because they are struggling themselves with finances and taking it to a different level. So, how can we be confident that our women's football is even going to be supported beyond where the? So, I feel like if, I mean, there are some well-off countries in Africa and they are really, really up there. But we need to think about everybody in terms of saying level playing field. It's not everyone that is well up there. For me personally, I would speak on behalf of Uganda and I'm thinking, I mean, the clubs are struggling out there, so you can't force them to even give them another burden of a women's football team because what's going to happen is the same that always happens where they'll put the men's team first and then women's football will become second class citizens. And I personally, I don't want to watch that happen because I love women's football so much. I believe we deserve first class, first class of everything. So no, 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 I don't think I would support that. I believe that it's better if people start something because they are ready, not because they are forced to do it. I think in that way, then at least if you see the clubs that have started up women's football, and even when you talk about Manchester United women, they started when they were ready, not when they were told you must have one because everyone else has one. I feel like when people
Right.
plan for it, they budget for it, then they create resources for it, then it becomes way easier to manage, and that means the football will grow on its own. And then we are talking about having different associations. I mean, that is a bit tricky because however much we do want to be, of course, kind of put separately, I believe we still need some little bit of support from the mother bodies in that regard. I would rather say let us have the injection of the finances separated rather than the whole association in itself. So, in that regard, I think it's better we can still be together, but just the resources and the finances can be separated. But yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, separate finances. Yes, and I know Brightwell, you're itching to jump onto this. Please take the floor. I'd really love to know
Yeah,
what you have to
I
say.
think it's the same. Separate associations, I think that's a bit too much. I
Mhm.
think in our infancy, we still need men to support, as in FIFA or CONIFA, the men's side. So I think we need capital injection in women's football until when it is able to run and fend on itself. Maybe as a project deferred, to have separate association, it would work. But I think the most important thing is probably really having separate finances for women football separate from men's football. I think that could work, especially when it comes to grants, FAB funds, development funds, COVID funds. Just give it directly to the women football that you want, that are the good beneficiaries, and not to an association that probably has got its own burdens, that would try to prioritize the men's side. They would want the men's side to go and win, and then they would get popular support, because we are dealing with politicians in football associations, so they are looking for popular support. So sometimes I think it's just good that we have probably one association but different bank accounts.
Yeah, we love the money bit.
I very much understand. And like, say, for example, like the FIFA Women's World Cup, and I think that's why this question came up, when you have the FIFA Women's World Cup and still having the men being in charge of organizing such kind of events. Do they consider some of these issues and even the things that you said, the financial injections into the women's teams directly? Will this maybe have like a better impact if it were existing on its own, having its own independent structures, but still relying on the main body for the financial empowerment? And I know this conversation will not end today, so yes, for the sake of time, we'll settle on the financial bit first, and then maybe follow up on this later. Thank you so much. And we are just again fresh from the CAF Women's Champions League, that had one of the best ratings in quite a long time, and it's quite impressive for the first CAF Women's Champions League, with the final being broadcasted across different networks from FIFA TV, local stations regionally, and I think it was from a global level. Being Sports was also involved. So, and I think that was quite impressive. And we already went back to this commercial aspect of the game, which is heavily dependent on visibility and coverage of women football. And I feel that was quite impressive for the first Women's Champions League. But again, the question is, what we've seen what this has done for the growth of women football. I've had incredible feedback from people on how this has really drawn them to love women football more. They really see the potential just from this first Women's Champions League. So, what role does the media play in growing women football, as we've seen? And I think it's a fact that it does do a lot, but has the sports media in the continent taken up this role effectively in your experience? And I'm going to throw this back at you with like the CAF Champions League media teams. Was the hype the same? I don't think so, as compared to the Men's Champions League. Even on the finals, the hype wasn't the same. Even the kind of articles, the conversations. People like Evelyn Badu will be trending right now, but that's not the case. So, do you feel the sports media in the continent has taken up this role to grow the women's game effectively, in your experience? Jean, please.
Um, Personally, I'm gonna say no, not yet. I mean, there are steps that are being done to improve that, and of course, it's gonna take time. I think just like Brightwell mentioned earlier about the time frame of how long men's football has existed, and now that women's football is, of course, a little bit. It came in a little bit later. Of course, that could be one of the factors, but at the same time, I believe that. We don't have as much media focusing on just women's football right now. Myself, when I was a player, I mean, I barely got anybody even asking me anything. Not until I moved into England to play there, and that's when I got some little bit of attention. So, I mean, I feel like in Africa, I would speak more with the experience of, let's say, Uganda, where probably the media would cover something just because they've been paid a couple of some few dollars or something. I mean, someone wouldn't come to genuinely cover the game. They would
We're losing
genuinely.
you, Jen.
I'm saying that people in Africa or media in Africa wouldn't necessarily come to cover the game because they really want to cover it, but probably to gain a couple of $100, which means that they are not going to be fully fully there, and they're not going to really write the stories. I mean, you look at the media right now in, of course, again, Uganda, where probably the women would participate and be win a key match, and then on the back pages you'd still see Manchester United won or Arsenal won. It's like it's always something else that comes before the women. And when they give some little bit of a tiny bit of the media, I mean, also us as players have a role to play, of course, I believe. Like I said, it goes back to that us showcasing the game in a positive way on the field and also off the field. The way we carry ourselves, we need to carry ourselves in a manner that we are loved and likable, and also just making the media really be in situations where they can't miss out on the game. I mean, you've talked of the Champions League. I mean, the women were showcasing football, and now we can see women now who are playing, and we are thinking, I really, really love this game. And you could see pictures of Ghana where fans were seated, and there were so many, and that included both men and women, and they're all ready to watch this game because, of course, they couldn't have fans in the stadium. Those are some of the little things that can bring the media on board. I think we have a big role to play as individuals so that we can attract the media, but also media itself needs to deliberately be involved in every single thing that women's football and women's footballers do. We need to raise the profile of these players as well, such that people get to know more and more about them. I mean, when you look at Asisat, she has showcased the game. She's now playing at the big stage, and the media is talking about her. So that's what we need more of our players to do. And also, it starts back from the basics. How are the coaches training these girls? Are we training the girls to standard such that they will showcase the best football to attract the fans, to attract the media? Or if we are not training the girls in the right way, then no one is going to be interested in watching a match which is already like 20-0 or 30-0. So we have a big role to play on the technical side, on the political side. We need to educate each other. We need to educate the politicians, because imagine if the queen or someone who is really influential spoke about women's football, all the media would jump onto the bandwagon, because the media just wants to make the news. So if we are not making the news, how are we going to attract them to come? So we have a big role to play, and we need to keep pushing to attract and also to make them actually follow our stories in that regard.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I'd like to emphasize on the fact that you said education. It's very central in this whole conversation because people still don't understand the value, or rather the potential, that women football has. Sometimes you'd even come up to someone and start talking about women football, and they're shocked that it actually has grown to that level. And it's something I do with my brother. He's 8, and we always try as much as possible to watch as many women football games as possible. And now, even when you ask him his favorite goalkeeper, he'll tell you SWAT, and no one really knows who SWAT is. But people who follow the women's game will understand who SWAT is. And I know he told it to someone, and he was like, "Who is SWAT?" And he was so young, but he was surprised that this person knows who SWAT is. And I think that's one of the ways that we'll be able to drive all of this. More attention towards the women's game. And if the media is not willing to take it up themselves, we have to be the one pushing it, pushing these agendas to the highest level, and also taking up all of this clever ideas. And I love what you said, introducing politicians and aligning that to the women football, and how the media will now tap into it. And I think that will be a great idea. Brightwell, please proceed. I know you have something to say.
Um, I think she has basically exhausted most of the things that I wanted to say, especially on media. Um, Safis, I'll just focus on just broadcast revenues and just say they need to pay for broadcasting rights. I think it's time they know that we are selling content, we have content, and that they should buy the content. They're not doing us charity by just screening our matches. without paying us broadcasting rights. I think if we are to have sustainable women's football development in Africa, then people have to pay up for everything that we are giving them because we are entertaining them. And I think this mentality that we just want to see the women's football match on TV should be a thing of the past. It was the first step, but going forward, they should now be paying up for the rights that we are giving them.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And now, like moving on to, for me, which I think is the most integral aspect of the game, which is very much lacking, and that is effective leadership, a leadership that recognizes the potential and actually advances the growth of women football in the region has been a huge challenge, from the lack of representation of the voices of women footballers, or even themselves not standing up for themselves, among other stakeholders from the policy and leadership level have limited the potential of the women's game. And and I think you already said this before, that women alone should not be the ones pushing for the growth of women football. It's everyone's responsibility. So while we are on this, and as you think about this question and how the leadership has contributed to this, do you feel that having women in key leadership positions contributes to this growth of women football? And if that is the case, what more can be done to create more opportunities in an environment that allows women leadership to thrive in the continent? Because even from based on experiences from the few men that I've spoken to, I know the experience are very much different for being a female leader in the sports field. And the kind of challenges that you encounter just trying to scale up or even trying to push for different agendas. So do you feel that having women in key leadership positions would actually contribute to the growth of the game? Please, Brackwell.
I think that's the most important step we need to take. We need to say that we need women in charge of their own game. We need them to be in charge of how they are playing on the pitch and also how they are playing off the pitch. I think, like have already said, we need to focus on quota system, introducing quotas and saying that for every association, we're expecting at least 2 women football representatives, because I think it won't change if we just say, yeah, we want more women. And then also, I think we need also to improve their competencies, because sometimes we want them to be in those positions, but at times they might not have the required skill set to be leaders. So I think what we need to do is have leadership development programs that are looking at potential leaders, and also we need to have proper mentorship programs. And I think we need to also have scholarships that try to give scholarships to women leaders or future leaders. I think that could create a competent women that can take up football leadership roles. And I think maybe on the separate association, maybe we could have a second president, and not a vice president, but a second president who's.
Oh.
Thank you so much,
I think
Bragwell, and
that's
I love what you
ambitious.
said.
That's too ambitious, I
Thank you
guess.
so
I
much.
know.
It's allowed. We're allowed to dream, yes. But yes, thank you so much. And I do agree with you. Capacities of women need to be built from a leadership angle, providing more coaching opportunities, providing more chances for them in the game. And even looking up, going back to something a friend of mine once mentioned before, like in the Kenyan context, we had so many coaching opportunities provided for the women, coaching classes. So many of them were enrolled. But again, when we come back to the ground, how many women are actually taking up these roles? Some of them are too scared to take up this. And I really don't like when people say the system does this and that. No, you take up the system and make sure the system dances to your tune, because if we don't aggressively take up some of these issues, positions, I feel we're always going to be lagging behind. If you have the coaching certificate, you have your CAFD, you have this and that. Get into the closest grassroots football organization that you can get close to. Try out at that specific position. You don't need to start at the highest level for you to be able to have that impact. And it's the little opportunities that we are offered in any space, and trying to find and navigating into it, starting from the position that we are granted. And you don't really need to be at the highest level to have the most influence in the game. And I think Jen will have a very interesting perspective on this, based on her experience. Please, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what Brightwell said as well regarding introducing a president and a president. I mean, actually, speaking about that gives me something to think about where in Africa, let's say, for example, CAF, where we are saying, oh, the first president and then the vice president and so on. I mean, now I'm thinking, why don't we have a president who is a female, and then, of course, a competent female, and then the second and the third vice president can be the men. I'm just trying to get that out of the way. So then we don't have to have, second and third. Oh, you know how we are saying, let's make someone a fourth vice president who is a woman, just to show that we are trying to create the whole equality thing. But so women in Africa, let us fight to be the presidents of CAF, and not, just trying to get that out of the way before I forget it. But I mean, speaking about women in leadership positions, I mean, it's just evident that we are struggling to find women who are passionate and who are competent enough to take up these roles. So I think what we need to do is to do a lot of capacity building. I think just like Brightwell mentioned again, where these women would learn, but also teaching somebody who is not passionate. So we need to do more to make this game likable to these women, and also to show them how beneficial it is to actually be engaged in these positions. Because most of the players, for example, I believe they love the game, and we have so many players across our continent. Now we need to show these players that, okay, maybe there are so many roles that you can do even after you become a player. It's not just becoming a coach. You can become a political football leader, or football administrator, or a medical doctor, so that we make these roles normal for these players, so that they take up these roles once we are finished. Of course, there is fear for women to speak up, because most women are, again, treated like second-class citizens once they're in these positions. And you feel like if you speak up, you're going to be stripped of your positions. And of course, sometimes women feel like it's such an honor to be in this, it's such an honor, or it's such a privilege. But you've earned it and you must be there. It's not like someone is doing you a favor because you're there. You've earned it, you have the competence. So don't let us not feel like as if, oh my God, if I do this, I'm gonna be taken away. Taken away for what? Because you're supposed to be there and you deserve that position. So I think also what stops more women into going in there sometimes comes from, let's say, the sexual harassment they face being in these positions, where they believe they're supposed to be in a certain way, or probably not be a certain size or look differently, so that they can impress these men, so that they can even listen to them half. We don't have to do all that. We need to normalize equality, such that everyone, as long as you're competent, you deserve these positions. And we need to push more women up there. We talk about the role models. I think the more we see more women out there, the girls are going to dream. Look at Fatuma Samora right now, and many women are dreaming, oh my God, I want to be a general secretary. I want to get that position, because they've seen that she's been there and she's done the job excellently. I mean, I feel like I don't think that spot should be taken by men right now, because she's just done exactly what a leader is supposed to do. And she's made so many young girls in Africa believe that these are positions that can be taken up by people like them as well. So, of course, again, we talked about educating ourselves. We need to eradicate the ignorance, again, with women. If you're there, women who are in these positions already need to speak up as much, and also make sure when they're in the closed room where no one is and they're fighting for these rights, they're actually mentioning other women so that they can have some backup plan fighting for the rights. When you're in that room, you need to fight for other people. You need to fight for. It's not a case of fighting for women, but we need to fight for competent people who are going to fight for the game, both men and women at the same time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And even while we talk about having more women leadership, issues as legitimacy of the leadership, and just them being actually qualified for some of these issues, for these positions, should be critical. It's not always just about dwelling on affirmative action, but actually having people who will drive these conversations right from the top and all the way down. And yes, there's a question while we're also on this topic of leadership. How can we have follow up that the funds directed to women's football from FIFA or CAF are actually used for that purpose? And I think um, the issue of integrity is something that we've seen in African football, or rather just football in general. I don't even want to say it's African, because leadership that doesn't take up the funds and not focus on the implementation, or just having those funds or use diverting them for other concerns. And I think we've already talked about this. So how can we have follow up to make sure that these funds are directed for the actual purpose that they're designed for? And also from just either it could be from a FIFA monitoring angle, or just in our own institutions. How can you do this? Please, Brightwell, you can take this.
I think we need to have a lot of auditing in our finances. Um, they shouldn't be just forensic where we are looking at something that has already done, but I think we need to look at a lot of issues, because what is the criteria to get a FIFA fund, like the grants? Sometimes they just need to have a women football strategy, which is just a document, and they are not really looking at the implementation. They are not paying for the
Right.
implementation. They are just paying that the association has got a women's football strategy, which it might not even follow. The association has got a league, which might not even get a single cent from the league development fund. So I think we need to move more and look at the implementation. When FIFA gives member association, they should now go and look and say, has Chipembere received funds that came from FIFA, because it is part of the league that the association got as a result. So I think we need to really look into these issues, and I think people should also be arrested, because I think this culture of impunity that is happening, especially in African football, should be arrested. I think we need to have some of these football bosses taken to court, not only by their governments, but also by FIFA, because FIFA should be seen to say, we gave you this money and you didn't use it in the proper way. And I think that could, but I think the biggest issue that we have already raised is, if the funds go directly to football, then we might not need to talk about diversion of these funds.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with you. Does FIFA need to also have like proper strategies to follow up on this, on the implementation of some of these things? Because at the end of the day, if they don't follow up, it actually makes them look bad. Because why would you give out money and not even care how it's spent? That really says a lot about an institution if they don't even follow up on how their funds are being used up. And just for the sake of time, I'll just jump right into the second question, the last question, which just covers everything that we've discussed today. What does the future of women football look like in the continent? And what more should the various stakeholders do to support its growth and advancement? This will be the perfect way to close this session. G, please.
Yeah, I believe we should encourage and provide sport for young girls at grassroots, so that girls can play football for fun, because that will, in my opinion, improve the sustainability of the game and the crop that is coming through, such that, you know, when they are seeing, let's say, the assets and all the players who are already there, they can see some role models, or when they're seeing the women in the key positions, they can still be inspired. We have to build, you know, a plan, and also build that peer support. Let's say getting other girls on board who are close to us or in the same age categories, and encourage that as well. We need to make it easier for girls to balance school and sports at the same time, of course, football, because some girls probably drop out of school and then they go to play football, and then that means they can't take up any other roles when they grow up, because all they're left with is probably coaching, and other than taking up these big political positions where you're supposed to probably have more a policy thinking mind or things like that. So we need to build that sustainability of influencing that. Then we need to teach, of course, girls that they can do it. So girls who, or women who are already there, seeing from the ones who have made it, we need to encourage them and show them that, look, you can do it, you can make it possible. So, and of course, we need to inject more funds into the game, create more investment. And yeah, I think, of course, for the sake of time, we shall leave it at that. But just to make sure that women's football in Africa blossoms, we need to all work together and make sure that we push without fear of failure.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. Brightwell, over to you.
Probably I would like to close by quoting someone who was a bit feminist and also a bit sexist at the same time. The future of football is feminine. That's Sepp Blatter, a bit sexist and a bit feminist. I think for football in Africa to develop, we need to tap on the grassroots. I'm also looking at school sports. I think we need to have more investment into schools and see if we can have a lot of competitions emanating from schools, like the NCAA model in America. I think that's the model we should be trying to tap into and try to have collegiate games where we have colleges, where we have schools that are playing professional, albeit amateur sports. And then we also need to look at league developments. We need all of our African countries to have leagues. We cannot, it's not sustainable not to have leagues and expecting probably just to see women's football at a national level. And I think we also need to invest in capacity building, which is what we have already talked about, of our administrators, our coaches, our future leaders. We need to invest a lot into that. And then we also need to create a lot of activity, a lot of buzz, a lot of information about women football. Like we already said, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of fake news. So I think we need to really come up with a strategy that explains a lot, that also explains that women football does not affect negatively the physiology of women or of future mothers, something like that. I think we need to give proper research and proper information to people so that people can really support it. And then finally, we need a lot of commercial investment into the game, from our broadcasting, from anything, merchandise, sponsorship. We need that in the game for our game to prosper.
Thank you so much. And I think that just sums up everything. From it, research, more investment, more coverage, more visibility, more support right from the grassroots. And I think also something that we've not really gone into, especially the region, on sexual harassment policies. What are the follow-up strategies in this regard? Are they being protected, especially the young girls that we have in different systems? So I think there could be so much that we can tap into as a region. And I think we've already seen the potential that we have in terms of women football. And I think this could literally be the ticket to just putting Africa right at the pedestal where we deserve to be. And women football would definitely be the one taking us to the spaces. And I don't know if anyone has any final comments. None? No one? You sure?
None.
This biscuits.
Nah. I think
Well, thank you so
final
much.
comment. final comment. If
Yes.
any African, especially our countries that have never been to the Men's World Cup, entertain their chances of going to any World Cup, I think women's football is the platform for Uganda, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Rwanda to be at the World Cup.
Absolutely. Yes, that actually kills us, ends us at the peak of everything. We'd want to see more African participation at the highest level. And if women football is what is going to put us up there. And I think if we divert all of this attention and all of these pointers that we've taken, and I know Brian is going to think about a follow-up conversation on this as well, because we cannot exhaust everything just in one session. Women football is so diverse, and there's so many issues that we can get into if you want to grow the game. But as we said, more intentional efforts from the leadership, from the stakeholders, the media, everyone, the fans. We just need to all work together and seek to grow the women's game. Yes, and thank you so much, everyone who's joined us today. This has been the Africa Football Business Show on the Women's Football Edition, and this conversation doesn't end here. If we really are passionate about taking this to the next level, this should be something that we keep on engaging in. And Jean mentioned on how us by leveraging this angle of more engagements, more conversations, and how this translates to more investment and more support from corporates and other institutions that would love to be more involved in the women's game. This is definitely the start and not the final time that we get to see each other. And thank you so much, everyone, and our panelists. And I cannot thank you all enough for the great work that you continue to do in your work. And yeah, I hope to meet you in person. Yes, doing something to grow the women's game as usual. Yes, thank you so much. This has been the Africa Football Business Show, brought to you by the Football Foundation for Africa. Sorry, everyone. And our partners, once again, are OTB Africa, Palmer Sports, and See Beyond the Leadership Forum, and the iSport LAN. If you want to take up some of these courses, please use the FFA 10 code for a discount on the courses. And yes, we do hope to keep more engaged and keep growing Africa. Thank you, everyone.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.